Welcome and thank you for joining us today for How Blended Analytics Can Transform IT Efficiency and Value. My name is Raleigh Gould and I will be your moderator for today's event. Our featured speakers are Dennis Drogseth, VP of Research at Enterprise Management Associates, and Sasha Gilenson, Founder and CEO at Evolven Software. Dennis brings over 30 years of experience in various aspects of marketing and business planning for service management solutions. He supports EMA through leadership in business service management, CMDB systems, automation systems, and service-centric financial optimization. Sasha is a recognized IT operation analytics thought leader. Prior to founding Evolven, Sasha was Mercury's top guru in quality processes and IT practices and has advised numerous Fortune 500 companies on technology and process optimization. And before I hand things over to today's featured speakers, I did want today's audience to know that Dennis and Sasha will be concluding today's presentation by taking your questions, so do feel free to log any you have at any time throughout the course of the presentation by using the Q&A functionality. Also, today's event is being recorded, and you will receive a follow-up email from Enterprise Management Associates tomorrow that will include the on-demand playback as well as some additional resources. So be on the lookout for that email. And now I would like to go ahead and turn things over to our first featured speaker, Dennis Drogseth. Dennis?
Thank you, Raleigh. And thank you all for listening in. Hopefully you'll find some of the information here interesting and relevant in terms of how you approach your analytic investments, what you should be looking for. It's a very early market still, and I think there's a lot of confusion about what should be going on in what we call advanced IT analytics. So for my agenda here, I'm going to cover quite a bit, I guess. A little bit of intro in terms of probably what most of you know very well, which is a struggle within IT to change and deal with changing business pressures. Then we'll look at how EMA views blended or what we call tiered analytics in a bigger picture of advanced IT analytics and what we mean by that as well. In a variety of dimensions, including heuristics as well as leveraging service modeling and differences from traditional big data. Talk about change in performance management as a critical handshake. I think that's also self-evident to most of you. Performance and change really do go together. And sort of offshoots of that can be things like planning change more effectively, capacity planning more effectively, et cetera. And then we're going to look at one deployment that I spoke to a little while ago, and this is an Evolven story. And share some of the insights from that deployment. I think it's actually quite telling. I always find it helpful to see what's really going on once solutions and technologies do get deployed. All right, so struggle to change. And I'll be shocked if any one of these bullets is a surprise. I won't spend a lot of time on them. The fight to get beyond from reactive to proactive. And deal with fragmentation and silos, toolset fragmentation, communication often, data, insights, and communication issues are often very closely tied. Often, again, IT definitions around technology and a specific tool or a specific area of focus limit better understanding, broader insights, and better communication. On top of that, there's a changing consumer population, which we'll talk about a little more in the next slide, more dynamic business requirements, and of course, as you probably also all know, IT is more, not less relevant than ever to the success of businesses and organizations that it serves. I'd like to mention just a couple of quotes from some of our consulting engagements focused on that second bullet in terms of fragmentation and communication. These are quotes from actual deployments where we did some strategic engagement looking at improving communication to a more service-aware way of working. One gentleman said, "We are territorial and don't want to replace our tools." Another one said, We have issues with toolset ownership. There's no confidence that anyone else will do the work, so I'll do it myself. Admits that in terms of how performance is managed, I think this quote is telling. We have 150 SLAs in place. They represent, nevertheless, a very small slice of the entire infrastructure. They're primarily focused on convenience, what we can get easily. So we still don't have meaningful SLAs that really measure inter-silo or cross-silo requirements. Those are just a few of the quotes. They're probably kind of ageless, but still true in many organizations. So here are some added stress factors that, again, you're probably all quite aware of. Cloud is a broker of services. IT trying to assimilate software as a service, applications and other services, as well as infrastructure as a service capabilities to support requirements for service delivery. There's also that what EMA calls the extended enterprise, which is partner suppliers, service providers. That's not new. Web 2.0 applications added another wrinkle there. And how do you manage across all those interdependencies, including cloud service providers? Another stress factor is the need to move to a faster, more agile DevOps way of working based on business requirements. Again, nothing new there. I'm going to look a little bit at analytics in support of that down the road. And the consumerization of IT, many books have been written about that. The whole consumer view has changed. Not that long ago, a decade or so, everyone who consumed an IT service viewed IT as sort of this temple on the hill that nobody could understand, but we all depended on them. And now we have 9-year-old children provisioning applications on their iPhone on the way to the movies. It's a different world, and that places IT in a very different kind of role. And the need to become a true business partner is greater than ever. Just by the way, along that business partner line, we did some research on digital transformation, which is not simply a magic wand, but requires a real handshake between IT and the business. And we did see that the most successful groups were shared business and IT leadership. And we also saw that those who had a team between IT and the business to plan relevance and value of IT services were 8 times more likely to be successful in their digital transformation deployments than those that did not. So looking a little more focused now at the war room in this environment, what do we need? We need a versatile kind of dialogue between operations and the service desk ITSM. That's one area that is often fragmented and data is not being very well shared between those two groups. Need visibility into the executive suite. We need integrated operation workflows, analytics, and user experience insights. And those ideally can be shared between the service desk and operations as well. Integrated DevOps with development with operations and that bigger picture, similarly providing feedback loops, orchestration, insights, change management that becomes a common handshake across the entire development process. And the deployment we'll talk about later will reflect some insights on that as well. And attention to change overall. We see a lot of value, evolving value actually, in things like application discovery and dependency mapping, and more dynamic approaches to a configuration management system as they're providing guidance and insight into dependencies for a number of use cases, whether it's asset performance or change. And of course, optimizing cloud. All right, so what do we mean when we talk about blended analytics? So there are a number of factors. Again, EMA is often called this tiered as well, tiered analytics. The general idea is that IT analytics can draw from monitoring and other sources that provide insights already. So some of the work is being done. It's not necessarily just all raw data. If you can harvest that in an intelligent way and put context around it, that's a very efficient way and fast time to bring value and create an analytic layer over and above those other investments. So some of the factors here, a little more, well, a lot more real time than it's certainly traditional BI has been. And that flexibility in data collection. Another factor is bringing in those contextual insights from service modeling, app discovery, and dependency mapping, CMS, et cetera, if they're available, providing that those sets of insights and coupling that with the analytic data. Scalability is a factor and a virtue here because, again, it's very nimble. We're not just putting necessarily everything into one pot, and so it can scale well for mid-tier as well as very large environments. And it's very well suited to a variety of use cases, and you can see here a few: performance, security, capacity, optimizing IT overall. So we have a big sort of market that we've described, or maybe it's more than a market, maybe it's a whole continent, called advanced IT analytics. It's still emerging, and we're not trying to narrow it down to just one or two technologies. But blended analytics or tiered analytics sits at the center of this in terms of innovation because it reflects a lot of the native virtues of the heritage of advanced IT analytics and bringing advanced heuristics across many different sources. So if you look at some of the other components in what we call advanced IT analytics at EMA, there is a data lake approach, and that's an evolving approach as well. And in some cases, blended or tiered analytics can be combined with data lake sources. So it's not necessarily all or nothing, but it tends to be different than just putting everything in one pot and hoping for the best. There are more limited capabilities that are really not able to assimilate data from many different sources. And then there's sort of the more classic early versions of advanced IT analytics that were very event-centric, but that's pretty much what they did, or very time series-centric, and that's very much what they did. We look at what you can get and achieve with advanced IT analytics and tiered analytics. When we did research just a year ago, in Q4, we saw these top 7 in terms of technical triage: cross-domain problem isolation, security, infrastructure with the network issues, triage across virtualized systems, looking at tiers and middleware, and in the DevOps area, in the provisioning applications, a key area as well. And then, of course, driving down into things like isolating problems internal to a system. What are the advantages of blended analytics over traditional sort of classic big data with many white coats and high administrative overhead? Speed in data collection, speed in analysis, better contextual insights in terms of relevance and sourcing. Things have a role when you assimilate them into a tiered environment. Contextual insights in terms of those interdependencies we talked about. A lot of flexibility in how you may go about assimilating different sources into that system, and drastically improved time to value. So if you're shopping around for blended analytics or advanced IT analytics, I would say, and we've done some evaluations, what are the qualities you most want to look for? You want to look for something that's service-aware and cross-domain. It's not really a good investment to think that you're going to get a super-duper in-depth set of data that's just focused on one domain. You want to be able to here assimilate symptoms and context, which is another way of saying a wide range of sources from events and log files and time series, as well as the context of interdependencies. You want to look for breadth of stakeholder support. In our research, we've seen the general goal is 9 stakeholders, 4 in terms of domain specialties, 3 cross-domain, and 2 business stakeholders. from the average advanced IT analytics deployment objective. That's what they want. It's multi-use case, multi-stakeholder. Realize value, not just, oh, let's put everything somewhere and hope for the best. You want to have support for cloud and virtualization, quick time to value, minimal administrative overhead. That should be done through the thinking and the architecture of the tools. And again, you're looking at a layer over and above your existing monitoring investments, making them smarter and more effective. So there are three roles to talking about those stakeholders. I said there were 9 in the average deployment. These are just 3, and actually change and config we're going to look at very closely in just a few minutes. But look at, if you think about it, you have a lot of data gathered, a lot of context around that, and different roles can optimize that value. So applications management wants problem isolation. They want to optimize the app in terms of the analytic value. They want to be able to bring in some business insights as well, ideally. And they want that application discovery and dependency insight into dependencies. That's key for them. As I said, we'll talk about change and config in a few slides. Development has a very parallel set of goals. A lot of similar data, although obviously in a different level, a different state, and associated with different tool sets in many cases. But they want availability and performance. They want to understand if-then change impact. And they want to have collected data collection, and they want to have those interdependency insights. So again, harvesting this data for multiple roles and stakeholders is a natural outcome, something to build toward. When we again did this research and we looked at the top values achieved, the first 2, 1 and 2 were tied actually. Not surprisingly, faster time to resolve problems and incidents, or availability and performance, another way of saying it, and then optimizing IT asset investments. The 2 are actually quite interrelated because it's a longer story than I probably have time for here, but service delivery and performance and the investments of IT really go hand in hand as a common thought. Then real-time insights into historical trends, correlation, change in performance, a big theme for today, and really is a close relationship. Insights into capacity, which actually is related to that change in performance comment as well. Faster identification of security, which is also tied into performance data often. And then the 7th is interesting because it highlights the sort of nature of self-learning or smarter investments where you're not simply building everything as rules to begin with. I told you we'd mention a little bit about DevOps. Specifically, when it came to analytics, what was the development community prioritizing? They had 2 key priorities tied for first place. One was minimizing their time stuck in operational issues, hoping that the advanced tools will allow them to spend more time in development. And the other was allowing them analytic insights to help them do development more effectively. Then the third was feedback, understanding how to better develop applications based on actual performance data once they're out, and then sharing that handoff with production, and finally support for QA. Before I go on to change of performance, I'll mention just a couple of other insights when we looked at analytics from ITSM perspective. Some of the top priorities there were between ITSM and operations of the service desk and operations, analytics for incident and problem, analytics for change, and then better decision-making between ITSM and operations, between IT and the business, and real-time predictive insights. So it's a really common fabric to bring IT together. All right, now let's look at change configuration management as sort of a key use case. What did those stakeholders prioritize? They wanted a better and more effective change management. They wanted to be able to isolate problems. Again, in provisioning applications, we tied into that whole DevOps story. That if-then insight, which can come from visibility into those interdependencies, and coupled with performance data. And from that, capacity planning insight can evolve. And of course, those linkages with service modeling, CMDB, configuration management system, ADDM, all key for change. This is an interesting slide. It's, I think, let's start at the bottom. And we'll have two bottom conversations on this slide and the next. Very few of our analytic deployments were not interested in getting interdependency data. And this is actually, should be a multiplier. So it's actually, these are about 2.5 times. So it's a little more than 12 that we're not interested in interdependencies. Not surprisingly, infrastructure to application or app to infrastructure was number one. That makes sense. And then number 2 and 3, infrastructure to infrastructure and app to app component, so to speak, in the ecosystem, tied for second, but actually tied for third, because second place is dealing with the virtualized environment. So there's sort of neck and neck there. All those make sense, especially given the rise of cloud, and those were those top priorities. In a separate question, we saw an even lower 3% not interested in getting some kind of service modeling combined with analytics. How do people want to get that done? Number one is build it into the solution. We've got it integrated. Number 2 is draw from outside sources for ADDM for performance. Number 3 was draw from ADDM for change, and then a federated CMS, and then a modeling dashboard. So we see a wide variety of deployments doing all these things in different ways. So now let's go to our deployment story. So this was a large financial organization, as you can see, spanning 14 countries, a large staff, and 9,000 in IT. That's a very big staff, and spread out across sort of the globe. The owner had a role in terms of service management and configuration management system, in this case. He was also doing contracts management, operations resilience, and planning, by the way. And his objective was looking at performance and DevOps, really part of change management, right? So he had 6 years in the past, moving from an ITIL, IT Infrastructure Library focus, and kind of moved away from it. Apparently, in his dialogue, he shared that they had a kind of a purist religious approach to it that was a little too rigid. What they did keep was incident and problem management from the service desk. But what they moved toward was a more fluid, agile approach, continuous development, and continuous integration. And that's kind of a radical shift. So let's look at some of the factors around that. So how they start out. They started out with a number of things, but event management was the first. And they were bringing in user interfaces for business apps, internet banking, and they were doing synthetic testing, actually, as well for user experience. They leveraged Evolven's blended analytics for a more dynamic record, change performance, and the DevOps initiatives. They were also bringing in the analytics to support the whole CMS with a fabric of more real-time awareness across a distributed framework, aggregating data from many discovery and other tools into that core system. And Evolven was at the center of that process. And so you'll see with Evolven, they had an analytically rich capability. I think those are rather eloquent, complementing the need for currency across a variety of areas, including the insights into impacting application performance, and giving them, by the way, far more granular insights than they would have achieved otherwise. So in terms of what they got, sort of win-win here, pretty dramatic values, a lot of ability to reduce core CMDB administration, so overhead reduction, going from 11 weeks to 8 minutes. I think that's a pretty dramatic. I haven't done the math, but I'd say that's a pretty high percentage of value. A much cleaner set of change verification histories. Again, insight as well as efficiencies, the two go together. Helping DevOps and development see the impacts of what they're doing, and double-digit percentile cost efficiency improvements over between 1 and 2 year period of time. So very happy to see that. It was a very innovative story. So kind of quick summary. Once again, starting with probably obvious to all of you, IT organizations need to deal with or adjust to a more dynamic, more cross-domain set of requirements, support a cloud, agile, digital transformation. Blended or tiered analytics can come to the rescue, indeed, by optimizing a lot of existing investments in configuration and monitoring and unifying them into a common fabric of insights. Combining, of course, the change management service modeling with event and other data enriches that story, and then we shared that one example with you. And my last slide is some market predictions. Just pretty high level here. I think all these are pretty safe, by the way, but you never know. One is, I think there's a high growth area. There'll be a lot of innovation, a lot of people trying to step up to this bar. But I think there's so much market confusion that that's going to still be a challenge both for IT adopters and a lot of vendors. I think a few, not everyone, will understand the inherent power of bringing service modeling to the analytics picture. And I believe that in one of a variety of flavors, and certainly Evolven is an exemplar, a strong exemplar, the blended analytics will become sort of the heart of the beast in bringing value. And that value will transcend beyond pure technology values to organizational insights, or rather organizational processes, better, more eclectic and shared stakeholder involvement, really helping to change the way IT as a whole works and serves the business. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Sasha for Evolven for the next part of our presentation.
Thank you, Dennis, and I would like to thank you for a fantastic overview of the current state in IT and the blended analytics approach, its impact benefits, a very nice case study.
Well, thank you.
Now, sure. So now let me introduce a specific approach to change-centric blended analytics and its applications that we have developed at Evolven. But first, a few words on who we actually are. So Evolven provides its blended analytics solution to large and medium to large enterprises in various technology-intense verticals, such as finance, insurance, healthcare, retail, and others. Our customers include Fortune 100 organizations. You see here examples of the names: JPMC, Fidelity, Barclays, Deloitte, Western Union, and many others. The customers deploy Evolven to manage tens of thousands of servers and devices on-premise and in the cloud in production environments that run critical business systems. We also have been endorsed by leading analysts and recognized by industry players. Actually, in 2013, Gartner chose us as a cool vendor in the IT operation management space. We won the Red Herring Top 100 Startups Award, TIE Top 50 Startups, and the CIO Review listed us as a most promising data solution provider. We work in partnership with a number of leading IT vendors such as ServiceNow, Splunk, Microsoft, CA, and other large IT system management and analytics vendors. The bottom line is that Evolven provides a proven solution backed up with real customers, endorsed by leading analysts and recognized by industry players. The concept of our blended analytics solution relies on three main pillars. First of all, focus on a change as a true root cause of performance and availability issues. Information about the actual changes is collected by Evolven using our own technology to ensure that various types of changes are detected across the end-to-end environment, and all essential information about actual changes is captured at the most granular level. The second pillar is data coming from all the relevant sources. This includes symptoms of environment issues and relevant IT context information, such as change requests in service desk, deployment data in release automation tools, topology in CMS systems, and similar types of information. Now, the third part is that the collected data, which actually is a lot, is processed by our analytics that relies on machine learning, anomaly detection, and domain-specific heuristics. I will talk more about this in coming slides. But the result of analysis of this processing by analytics engine is a set of clear insights identifying, first of all, what changed. That's one of the main questions asked by IT operations in case of an issue. Did any of the changes cause an issue or can cause a future issue? Sounds pretty good, too good maybe to be true. And so let's explore how it actually works in greater details. As Dennis has pointed out, the change information is a critical piece of any root cause analysis approach. Evolven uses changes as a secret ingredient to allow our analytics to uniquely close the last mile of detection and diagnosis process, leading exactly to the true root cause of an investigated or potential operational issue. 95% of all performance availability issues can be attributed to changes, 95%, because we look at the changes in the wide sense, changes in application code, environment configuration, application data, capacity of the business system, or the workload the business systems handle. The rest are typically just hardware failure. And think about it. What else can cause a problem? Changes indeed are the true root cause of most of the incidents. Now, focusing causal analysis on changes with Evolven, you move into a proactive, preventive mode of work. Evolven detects and analyzes changes as they happen and differences that the changes cause. Typically, there is a time lag between the change and an issue it causes. This gives you the ability to recognize early on a high-risk change and remediate it before the incident impacts performance. You do not need to wait for symptoms to show up when there is an incident. But even if you need to respond to an incident that has occurred, the whole investigation process can be radically shortened. Evolven has already collected change information that holds the true root cause of the incident under investigation. Our blended analytics correlate the changes with symptoms and IT context, analyzing them to estimate risk level and give you the root cause in seconds. The result is drastically faster mean time to resolution and much lower risk. One of the challenges in using change information in order to investigate and prevent operational issues simply the difficulty to get this information and the lack of such information. And today we are the only vendor that collects and analyzes actual changes across end-to-end IT environment at the most granular level. And when I say end-to-end environment, I mean from application down to infrastructure and all the layers included: web servers, application servers, databases, messaging buses, operating systems, hypervisor, virtual management platform, cloud platform, and even hardware layer. We extend the notion of change to all change types, including configuration and application infrastructure, capacity, data, workload, and application code. And we look into the changes at the most granular level. What it means is that, for example, we break down configuration changes to the level of individual parameters, being able to say what exactly changed in each parameter value. All this information is collected in near real time so that it's accessible when the analysis needs to be done. And again, to leverage this time lag between the change and incident. By taking symptoms and context data from external tools And blending this with changes, Evolven processes a lot of operational information. It is impossible to get value out of this data without automated analytics pointing to the most critical details that need to be reviewed and addressed by the IT team. So our analytics address two key goals. First of all, cleansing and correlating, the data coming from all the different sources, collecting by Evolven on its own, and also by external tools, like, again, Service Desk, APM tools, load management tools, and so on. And then the second part is risk analysis. First, all the blended data needs to be condensed and standardized to allow correlation. Then symptoms and context should be correlated to changes. Once the relationships are established, our analytics engine estimates risk of each change, identifying changes that are the most probable root cause candidates or have high probability to cause future issues. The risk is aggregated from individual scores, calculated for each change dimension, and also blended data sources. You can see here in the example on the slide such a multidimensional risk assessment. So let's look at a few dimensions. The time anomaly is one of the machine learning algorithms, or as we call dimension used by Evolven Analytics. Let's say that your application is typically updated after business hours, the regular maintenance window. Suddenly we detect an application change deployed in the noon. Most probably this is an emergency pitch, which obviously is more risky. Typically you would expect again, that all the changes will happen through the maintenance window. An example of a heuristics algorithm is consistency. Let's say a change is deployed in a cluster of servers. However, Evolven detects that one of the servers in the cluster was not updated. That means the change is inconsistent and poses more risk as such. In other words, Evolven analyzes changes over time and also across environments. So how is the Evolven blended analytics technology used by customers? Well, there is a variety of scenarios that we have seen organizations apply Evolven for. However, there are really four main use cases that customers have implemented consistently. First of all, the reactive use case, the typically application support, production support teams typically start with accelerating troubleshooting. So these teams use Evolven to zero in on actual changes that are most probable root cause candidates for an investigated incident. Now, the operations teams and service management teams quickly realize that it's more effective to use the data already available in Evolven to prevent incidents rather than just troubleshoot them. Evolven early alerts users on high-risk changes. It's one of the things we can do. But also customers proactively analyze and manage consistency within and across their environments, as consistent environments cause significantly less issues and are much easier to manage. Another proactive application is integration of Evolven Analytics into the DevOps practice. And Dennis was talking about this. Increasing the pace of changes makes it really difficult to maintain and improve stability. We help to accelerate deployments as the overall life cycle while maintaining flexibility by being able to validate infrastructure readiness before application deployments, knowing exactly what was released and was actually released as it was tested, detecting early high-risk changes that can cause issues post-release, and also if there are post-release stability issues, correlating them quickly to the changes in the update. Automated audits, the last case, is essentially a side effect of the complete history of actual changes collected by Evolven. This information is essential for compliance and risk management. An ability to retrieve a proof of change easily from Evolven saves significant manual efforts supporting internal and external audits. We even have customers that provide access to Evolven directly to their auditors, that just also save a lot of time and pain to them. So with that, I would like actually show you what, how the product looks and what it does. So this is essentially a web interface of Evolven. Evolven is a web-based application that you can deploy on-premise, or it's also available as a software as a service from the cloud. Here we start in the inventory module, where I want to start with showing you what kind of information and the depth and granularity and extent of information collected by Evolven. So on the left side, you see the list of the servers, virtual, physical, and devices scanned by Evolven. And here I took one of the servers, and we can see that Evolven detected Windows operating system, Tomcat, a application server and also a set of applications running under the Tomcat. So let's start with Windows, and we can see that we collect information from various configuration files, and on top of that we collect all the typical things, components, languages, drivers, services. But we also go in depth and collect actual parameters of operating system, Windows operating system kernel. We also, any files that configuration file will collect will break down to see again how it looks, how it actually breaks down to individual parameters, so that when the change happens, we can see the specific details of the change, which parameter changed to what value. Now, the information that is collected also associated with the knowledge base that comes out of the box with Evolven. So you can see here in the impact column, the red, yellow, and gray thunderbolts actually indicate what kind of potential impact a change in such configuration parameter can make. What is the criticality and area of impact of such change? And this knowledge base is developed, maintained, and enhanced by the community of experts working with Evolven. Similarly, the information is collected about the applications, and you can see all the different files and configurations coming with the application as well. And yet again, this information will be parsed and decompiled to the level of individual configuration parameters. Now, what do you do with this information? That's more important. So one of the things that we mentioned, it could be used to accelerate investigation of the incident. So what we see here is actually the analysis console, where all the information, blended information, and changes detected by Evolven are consolidated together. So first of all, we see the events, like contextual events, like in this case, automated deployments registered with ServiceNow, and we can see which of the changes, right now highlighted, are associated with a particular deployment. You can see it here. Similarly, the other piece of information blended with the changes is the symptom information, so APM alerts. So here we can see, for example, as an example, Dynatrace alert, and Dynatrace is one of the leading APM tools, where we see the Dynatrace reports that response time of particular transaction is slower than defined threshold. It's actually getting worse, slower than 5 seconds and than 10 seconds. So using Evolven and investigating the incident is as simple as that. You generally click on the alert. The system correlates alert with the potential candidates for the root cause of incident, and we can see this is a list of the changes selected by Evolven, highlighted by Evolven. Now, Evolven actually prioritizes changes. As green, yellow, red is the level of the risk calculated by Evolven. So essentially, it's a probability for Evolven to for this change to be a root cause of the incident investigated. So we quickly, focus on high probability changes, and we can see then as a second pane, as the donuts below that, these changes are coming from Microsoft SQL and from Windows. We can actually see, that all of these changes are manual, and we can see where the changes were made. So some Windows services were updated and views in Microsoft SQL. You can make a next step if you actually, understand the systems and see what actual granular changes were implemented here. And we see that a particular column was added in one of the database views, and some of the Windows services were started. From that point, the experts can easily identify, which of the changes was the actual root cause of the performance problems that we were investigating. The other use of Evolven is actually, we talked about this, looking into consistency of the environment proactively. So we can actually go and pick one of the, what we call analysis plans that compare different Windows servers in a cluster, essentially a cluster of the servers. So we'll execute the comparison, and we'll see how different, how consistent these environments are. right now the calculation happened, and now we can see the following, that where actually the differences, first of all, where are the differences? We see that the differences are in Windows updates, in drivers. The system automatically classifies different types of differences. We can see actually what are the levels of the risks and how it's distributed, how these differences are distributed. And obviously we can focus again on the high risk differences only. We can also see how this, what is the impact, potential impact of these differences. So we can see again, how the knowledge base classifies the impact. And we can see that all of these differences, detect differences, were introduced manually. So here we can see, where, the differences are, and we can, again, in the consistency map, this color map with green, red, and yellow boxes, we can see the patterns that actually one of the servers is consistently inconsistent when comparing, with the rest of the servers. So as simple as that. And we can see that this is a particular, the server 0016. There is another, a quick, just, showing quickly another example of the use of Evolven, defining a specific policy that will actually ensure that the target state of environment is in place. So while the system, Evolven as a system, automatically collects information and automatically assesses level of the risk of changes in inconsistency, you can be very specific and say, certain things are more important to me than others. And in this example, we can say that, it's very critical for me that Microsoft SQL ports, that my Microsoft SQL servers will be all listening on a particular port. As a DBA, that's a critical, as a critical requirement. So you can define this kind of policy easily, and Evolven will actually execute these policies on a regular basis and match also the changes against these policies. And you can easily see which of the servers are not complying. Now, using our risk analytics, the non-compliance to a policy gets over the highest level of the risk. So with that, there is a lot of different capabilities that I can show, but as we are limited in time, I would like to hand it off back to Raleigh so that we still have time to answer the questions.
Great. Thank you, Sasha. We do have quite a few questions, so if for some reason we aren't able to get to yours, I will send your question on to Sasha and Dennis, and someone will get back to you. So to begin, let me find the first question here. First, let's just start with a clarification question from one of our audience members. He wants to know what OOB stands for.
That's actually out of the box.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, Sasha. The next question I will address to you, Dennis, and Sasha, feel free to chime in if you have something to add. This attendee says, I understand that this talk is for IT. How do you branch out to business? That is, to use blended analytics to blend business processes and applications to transform an enterprise's agility, digital transformation, and process efficiency and value. Dennis, what are your thoughts on that question?
Well, we just did some research on digital and IT transformation. Raleigh, is the webinar, is that still available online or not? It's not probably, is it? On demand?
It is actually.
Okay, so number one, if we have your email, we can forward you the URL, and that's probably the best place to entertain what could be a very long discussion, and should be actually. But to try to do this in, kind of the 30 seconds or less mode, what I would say is, of course, there are technology requirements, and blended or analytics is at the heart of that, along with automation, but and sort of visualization and good reporting and workflow, et cetera. The other piece of that, of course, is cultural and process related. involves team building and a leadership willingness to bring both sides together at the table and have conversations about priorities. The data that you get from blended and tiered analytics can drastically improve the efficiencies and relevance of that conversation. But there's a very strong human factor in pulling it together, and a strong leadership factor in pulling it together. The one thing I will say, though, is, and I think I mentioned this in the webinar, when we did our research on digital transformation, those most successful were shared leadership between IT and the business versus primarily a business driver or primarily just an IT driver. And so that does underscore the need to have leadership create teams, build teams, and build dialogue. Not a new idea, by the way, but with digital transformation and current era, it's taking on a new life.
Great. Thank you, Dennis.
Maybe to add is that, when you speak about this area of digital transformation, business process efficiencies, there are multiple layers here. There is, first of all, the underlying technology, and then the business process itself. And rolling up this data, on just to give you an example, we make an application change, in our, let's say in our digital platform, and want to assess the impact of the change. There are certain components, like first of all, we executed actual technology change, and this is actual technology change, become accessible to the customers, and it makes an impact on the business. And so there are, we talk about the IT here, but it's like one of the tiers that should roll up in the overall assessment of the business process efficiency.
Thank you, Sasha, for that additional information. Now, jumping into the next question. Sasha, I'll start with you. Again, Dennis, feel free to chime in. This attendee wants to know, how mature does your change management need to be in order to get value from blended analytics such as Evolven?
So actually, we have experience with two extremes. A completely, very mature organization like large banks, for example, as well as startups that have zero, change management process. And we see that blended analytics and Evolven plays a role, in both. It's just that the use case essentially is changing. In case that the change management is completely mature, you suddenly get the automatic system of the record that tracks, detects what actually happens in your environment and is able to analyze it as, in near real time, again, predicting the issues and helping you to resolve those. So essentially, it helps you to deal with the current lack of the process automatically. At the same time, when you have a mature change management system, Evolven closes the loop of this process. You have a service desk and you have a system of records for changes, but what actually happens in the environment, being able to map this actual data back to the change record, makes the process complete and effective. So I would say that there is no maturity requirement to start to use blended analytics. It's just as the end goal, the use case will change.
Yeah. And I would say, based on our own consulting work, maturity is also tricky to measure, and sometimes there's a false sense of maturity based on what can be a rigid adherence to process definitions that may not actually work for your organization. And the one thing I would say that usually goes well with blended analytics or other initiatives, change management, CMS, et cetera, is good leadership at some level and willingness to dialogue and look at your unique environment and optimize to your unique environment, and then try to build processes around that. ITOA is certainly still relevant and can be a great touchstone, but versatility and dialogue and leadership, whatever stage you're at, can go a long way in accelerating the process.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Sasha. One more question before we conclude. As I said previously, there are a number of questions we're not going to have time to answer, but I will be sure to send these on to Dennis and Sasha so they can get an answer for you. The last question I'm going to ask is, isn't service modeling going out of style? It's too slow for cloud and virtualized environments. How will it work with containers? Any thoughts on that question, Sasha and or Dennis?
I'll jump in on it first, I guess. The answer is just the opposite, actually. The simple sentence here, and I guess it goes along with this webinar and our company with Evolven, is service modeling is evolving to capture cloud. It's become very strategic in optimizing not only private cloud, but in some cases public cloud environments. The need to understand interdependency is actually greater than ever. Obviously, containers create some unique challenges, but there are ADDM solutions evolving to look at containers and microservices, as a matter of fact. So it's not necessarily your grandfather's Oldsmobile or whatever the cliche is, but perhaps ironically, especially given some of the cloud vendor rhetoric, service modeling is more relevant and more essential than ever before, and because, frankly, the resources for IT are more complex and varied than ever before, and the need to deliver value is greater than ever before.
Great. Thank you, Dennis. That brings us to the conclusion of our event. As I stated at the beginning of the webinar, you will be receiving a follow-up email from Enterprise Management Associates tomorrow, and it will include the on-demand playback, a PDF of the speaker slides, and some additional research. So I do hope that you'll check that email out. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.